أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. It is a great honor, a privilege to be at the service of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and to, with each other, inshallah, joining hands, that we increase our spirituality, increase our Islamic knowledge, and inshallah be more energetic about Islam, inshallah, together. I would like to thank again Sheikh Ahmad Mudarris. May Allah bless him, may Allah rahmat his father, inshallah, for doing this very sincere act and introducing me and making sure that this place has somebody. Unfortunately, you will be getting someone much worse than Sheikh Ahmad Mudarris. He's much better than me. But inshallah, we still want him to be part of this community, of course, especially on Saturdays when Sheikh has time, even by switching places or going wherever Sheikh decides to send me, inshallah, I will go, inshallah. But his action is very sincere. And inshallah, together, and I will also be consulting Sheikh, inshallah, also, that we will be able to increase our spirituality and be able to make this place a shelter, nur, inshallah, for the United States, inshallah, a place of nur, a place of that we can save ourselves, a place of safety, inshallah, for our spirits, for our children. Tonight I'm going to mention one of the verses of the Quran, and we'll start, inshallah, our endeavors with this verse of the Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. يَوْمَ يَقُولُ الْمُنَافِقُونَ وَالْمُنَافِقَاتِ للذين آمنوا انظرونا تقتبس من نوركم نقتبس من نوركم قيل ارجعوا وراءكم فالتمسوا نورا. On the day of judgment, the hypocrite men and the hypocrite women will say to those who believed, wait for us that we may acquire some of your light. It will be said to them, go back behind you and seek light. From the Quran we learn, and we talked about this other nights, and Salatul Jum'ah, and also in other centers, the fact that the hereafter is a place where one is trying to gather light in nur. And the believer, where does the light in nur reside? With the believer, with the mu'min. Because a mu'min has attached himself to the Quran, to the Prophet, to Ahlul Bayt, to their sayings, and has acted upon it. Therefore, you might not see in this world the true effects of a believer. But in the hereafter, that believer will be much different than what you think in this world. Because we are not used to being able to gauge someone's value in this world, spiritual value. Allah has hidden that. Some are allowed, some have that permission, but in generally, we don't know who has a lot of light, who has less light. We don't even know who's a hypocrite, who's a believer. So in the hereafter, the kafir, the munafiq, comes to the believer and says, give me some of your light. It's a dark time, a troubling time, very difficult time. And the believer tells them what? To go back to that world where you were and to seek light there. This is not a place for you to seek light. Go back to the dunya. So our endeavor is to try to gain as much light and nur as possible while we are alive in this world. Because that is the biggest differencia between man and animal and the other creations. Some of the ulama has defined man as being hayyun muta'allih. Alive, mankind does not have death. A lot of times we forget that there's no actual real death for mankind because his spirit, when he's created, he's going to last forever. He's going to last forever. There's no real annihilation for us. There's just transformation. So one of the genus of us with other creations is that we live forever, like angels. But we're different than them Because we have this ability to reach ta'alluh and godliness by our free will and by our actions. That with our choice, we can choose between nur and dhulamat. We're trying to gain as much nur as possible in this world. So when we look at the hadith, for example, or the ziyarats, what is the best way for us to gain nur? How can we gain nur and light? Some of us might have this feeling that we are away from the shrines, we are away from holy places, we are away from, good communities that are very, thousands of people, speakers, and reciting for Ahlul Bayt. We might feel that we're in a dark place. But is this true? Does a believer have to be so pessimistic? Can a believer in the United States, in Los Angeles area, can they become a true mu'min and shine? And the narrations say when you practice and you believe in Islam, you will shine like the shams, like the sun. So today we're going to be talking about some of the methodologies, and in general I've been speaking about this topic for a little bit, how to gain light, how to have nur, how to have that connection to God. When you see one of the verses in the Holy Quran, Allah is defined as Allahu Nur al-Samawati wal-Ard. We have to know that the source of light is where? Is God. Even the imams that we have, the prophets that we have, the holy books that we have, they get their light from Allah. He is the source. And when we say Allah Nur al-Samawati wal-Ard, Allama Tabatabai, and explain this in another center, says this about this verse, because there's different interpretations. That when you say Allah is nur and light, it means this before we start this journey. It means that Allah is huwa dhahir bidhate wal mudhiru li ghayri. That God is dhahir, apparent by himself. Does anybody need to give light, for example, to the sun? Do you need to put a flashlight, or your new iPhone 13? Do you need to put the light on the sun to make it brighter? No, you don't, because the sun is much brighter than a little bit of light that we have. So adhahir bidhate means that Allah is manifest, just like the sun's light, you could say as an example, is manifest without anything else showing. And it's mudhir li ghayri, meaning everything else, the sun, when it's daytime and sunrise happens, everything else is shown for us, because darkness is a place for us that we don't know where things are. You don't know, if you're in a dark room, you don't know where things are. So Allah is the Nur al-Samawati wal-Ard, with this understanding that He Himself is so manifest. His light is so manifest that He does not need anything else to be shown with. He does not need other creation to point to God. As you have in some of the du'as from Imam Hussein, you have, for example, Bika araftuk. Through you I have come to know you. That if but this is the condition, is somebody's heart is salim, that we have a qalb salim, we have aql salim, where our intellect works right. And the other sources that we have, they work right. If they work right, we will see Allah. We'll witness Him with the hearts, as Imam Ali alayhi salam says. So this endeavor of gaining light is actually very inherently easy for us, because Allah is Nur al-Samawati wal-Ard. And for us, there is this attraction towards God. One of the best ways, and we're going to mention later on, inshallah, if we have time, the Quran is light. You should look at the narrations, the verses. Quran is light. The Prophet of Islam is Siraj. Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam are nur and light. Khalaqakumullah anwaran. Allah has created you as light. And kalamukum nur, the speech of Ahlul Bayt are light. Also you have in Ziyarat Jama, wa ashraqat al-ard bin nurikum. The land is enlightened, has light because of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So what is the best way to seek light? Is by following these guidance, these tools of guidance that God has, and of these instructions that God, our Mawla, has for us, is salat. Is salat. One of the best ways for us. And when I say this, don't pretend that I'm not pretending to be the salat master. I do not have a black belt in salat, but I'm working on it myself. And we're together, believe me, I'm benefiting when I'm speaking, because when you speak, it's important to address yourself at the same time. Salat is nur. Salat al-Layl is nur. This is one of the best ways for us to reach light. When you look at this important obligation, and at the end we're going to be talking about those that practice salat, what happens to them, and those whose salat is accepted, because we want, at the end, an accepted salat. There's a way that you approach salat, as I learned the ahkam, which is important. You learn how to do wudu right, you learn how to do the salat right, sujood right, ruku right. But at the end, what are you looking for? That benefit, right? You want benefit from salat. You want to become full of light and nur. You want to feel different after salat. One of the problems that we have, and I tell myself this after many years of worship, we might have the same salat as we had before, that same connection that we have, because of our busy schedules. And believe me, I know how busy it is in the United States. But when you take time off and when you concentrate in salat, you see that nur hits you. One of the things that happens with salat is each time when you approach it, is that you have to realize that Allah has called you and taken you and invited you to talk to Him. When you do Allahu Akbar, for example, and you're in salat, you have to realize the fact that what's going on is that Allah wanted this to happen. Because everything in this world happens with the permission of God. Can something happen without His permission? That would be shirk and kufr. So when He wants me and I'm doing salat, and I say Allahu Akbar, and that salat is realized, at that time, Allah wanted this to happen. Allah wanted this to happen, and I could have been like others that look around us. How many people are performing this salat? So the first thing is taking salat not for granted. Understanding that Allah wanted you to talk to you. He wanted to talk to us through salat. Look at some of the verses in the Quran that we have about this action. We have, for example, we see in the Holy Quran about different prophets and what they say about salat. We have, for example, one of the du'as we have of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, رَبِّ اجْعَلْنِي مُقِيمَ الصَّلَاةِ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي. Prophet Ibrahim was making dua, make me an establisher of prayer and many from my descendants. That he made this dua, and it's important for us, for our progeny also, to make dua that our family members, our descendants of descendants are part of the musallin. Or we have from Prophet Musa alayhi salam, indeed I am Allah, in the speech with Musa, there is no deity except me, so worship me and establish prayer for my remembrance. وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةِ لِذِكْرِي. Do you want to remember me? Remember me through salat. This beautiful action. And I tell people over and over this, that if you had someone design salat this way, everybody in the world to design, you wouldn't be able to design something so beautiful. With the adhan, with taharat, with purity, with congregation, with unity, with one qibla, with recitation of the beautiful Quran, with ruku and with sujood, that you are, and it's an embodiment, a display of tawadu and humbleness towards God. If you want to draw how humans can be humble towards God, could you draw anything more humble than salat together, everyone together, and the more the better, all in sujood and prostration? No. So then we have Prophet Isa alayhi salam in the Quran, that he mentions Prophet Isa alayhi salam, قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حيا. That Prophet Isa alayhi salam, from a cradle, Jesus alayhi salam, from a cradle, he was saying he had made me blessed wherever I am and has enjoined upon me prayer and zakat as long as I am alive. So this is the manhaj and the path of the prophets, is salat. And nobody else has as much nur and light as prophets and the successors of prophets. If you want to say how, 5 times a day at least, Some like Amir al-Mu'mineen, 1,000 raka'at would pray salat because they're always in that connection with long sujoods, with long rukus. Will a person then become separate from God if his salat is accepted, if his salat is frequent, if he pays attention to salat? Some of the issues with salat we won't mention now is those things that you do before coming to salat. How your mind is, how your heart is. Na'udhu billah, if somebody commits a sin, how their heart is pure to accept that good salat. Because even if a person tries to focus as hard as they can, but their heart is full of the dunya, it's attached to the dunya, that heart will not be full of light and nur. There won't be anywhere for the angels to land. There will be not a place for them to be able to connect to God. So a lot of salat is about that preparation that we do in that day to reach salat. Because we don't have any action better than salat throughout the day. Even if you work, you tell yourself, why am I working? I'm working for salat. Because salat is a symbol of ubudiyat, of worship of God. Nothing should be more busy, and I'm telling myself over and over this, so that in the hereafter, inshallah, we won't have trouble, that we remind ourselves constantly that the fact that everything we do is for our salat. There's nothing more important than salat. Hayya ala khayril amal in the adhan. Before being changed, you know that there was bid'ah and they changed the adhan of the Prophet. Hayya ala khayril amal, meaning come to the best action. Hayya ala khayril amal. Actually, in some of the hadith it says about some of the reward. Did you know that your wajib prayer also has a lot of reward? Not only is it wajib, but Allah makes it wajib and gives thousands of, look at the hadith of Umrah and Hajj, something for like one faridah, one wajib salat. So much reward is in Hajj itself, or making dua after salat, for example. After salat is over, making dua. I think that during this pandemic, we realize how important our salat is, and in congregation, how much we focus more. Don't you focus more better in a center, a place like when somebody wants to study, they go to the library. When somebody wants to learn something, they go to an institute of, that field, that technology. When you come to the center, this is the center where we're all benefiting from each other's nur and light, especially from the shaykh's nur and light. So therefore, when you come here and you pray, it is much different than praying at your home. Much different than being in dhulamat. Believe me, I was raised here. And being separate from the masjid, from the centers, from the hadith, for the entire week, you don't get anything. They say when you watch a movie, a film, your mind is constantly thinking about that automatically for 24, 48 hours. Constantly thinking about that movie or something that happened. If you don't get that knowledge, if you don't get that salat jama'at, if you don't get that congregation, slowly and slowly you drift. How our leadership, how great Marajas say, you don't become fasid or corrupt like that in 1 second. Slowly and slowly and slowly someone begins to drift. So coming to the centers and performing salat jama'at, talking about salat, talking about hadith of Ahlul Bayt, reading the Quran, which is light, which the brother beautifully did. This all has this metaphysical benefit that we don't even see. Where do you see it? In the hereafter. You will feel it in this world. Believe me, you will feel whenever you do a good salat and you do worship God, and unfortunately we don't worship God how we should, but whenever we do a good salat, what type of feeling do you have afterwards? You feel very good about yourself. When you're away from good salat, when you're away from the community, away from hadith and Quran, how do you feel? And actually this will help you in your work more. This will help you in your lives more, in your marriage more, in your everything, or your social responsibility more, because this will give you that light and nur, that's barakah. At the end, I'm going to talk about this hadith. That's a piece of advice from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. That's about salat alayhi salam. There's a beautiful hadith in Tuhaf al-Uqul. And when we went to the Hawza, one of the best things that our teacher taught us was to pay attention to hadith. The narrations talk about you understand someone's worth with how much hadith they know. The companions of the Imams, they would study the hadith and sayings of the Imams, write them down, record them, practice. Some of them 15,000, 30,000, 45,000 traditions they learned from the imams. And that is what they did. And that's the job of the ulama and those that are with the ulama, to learn and preserve the hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. In Tuhaf al-Uqul, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam addresses Abdullah ibn Jundab and talks about salat, and talks about those whose salat is accepted salat. And this has to do more with that preparation that we talked about, that good salat comes from preparing yourself. And that's how everything good in this world comes. When you want to have a good feast, a good birthday party, a good meeting, it's all about that preparation that happens before it, that timing, so you know everything's prepared, everything's ready, and then it will have its impact. So, إِنَّمَا أَغْبَلُ الصَّلَاةِ مِمَّنْ يَتَوَاضَعُ لِعَظَمَتِهِ. The first thing from Imam Sadiq, and I say this because at the end I like to end my speeches with words of advice, practical things that we can act upon, not just theoretical. The first thing is, whose salat is accepted? A person that is humbles himself before me. That Allah is narrated to have said in hadith, that Imam Sadiq sometimes has hadith Qudsi, meaning Allah says, my salat is accepted for a person that humiliates himself before my greatness. That when he lives his life throughout the day, he's always thinking about he has a Rabb, he has a Mawla, he has a very powerful Lord, he has a commanding Lord, and he has a mission in this world, he has a goal in this world, and it's to submit to him, to serve him, and to be able to be lifted. And the opposite, a person that doesn't even think about this, doesn't recognize their Lord, doesn't recognize the right of their Lord. They are free to do whatever they want because they don't have a Mawla. We have a Mawla, we have a Lord. So the first thing, someone that is his salat is accepted, is a person that's in that realm of ubudiyat, of ta'zeem of Allah. Is always, you could say, if you could illustrate it, is always in ruku'. His back, is bent towards Allah always. 2, وَيَكُفُّ نَفْسَهُ عَنِ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنْ أَجْلِي. We live in a time period where there are many temptations. And temptations are very easy. Everything's close to us now with the devices that exist. But there are those that have iffat and chastity and modesty when it comes to this, and they separate themselves from the pleasures for my sake. How hard is that? You have temptations that are of this world, and you say, I don't want this. I want Allah. How satisfied would that make Allah? A young person sacrificing himself and fighting against his nafs, fighting against his desires. What's haram? Not to do it. And Allah, of course, do you think that will be taken lightly, that will be taken for granted? No. So the second thing, someone fights against his shahawat. The first is he is humble before Allah. وَيَقْتَأُ نَهَارَهُ بِذِكْرِي. He spends his days remembering me. The entire day you're remembering Allah, Allah, Allah. Then when it comes to salat, you remember Him with better quality. But if you forget Allah, you're just busy, oh, it's time to pray, then your salat won't be good. You're connecting that dhikr, dhikr Allah that's kathir, abundant throughout the day, wherever you go. And sometimes that's why a lot of our scholars, they wouldn't speak much. Because when they speak, they feel that they would be separated from God. They would have samt. Ayatollah Sayyid Ahmad Khan Sari, it's in one of the mujtahideen in Urafa in Tehran. When the Tehranis in the bazaar, they came to get somebody to lead them. They asked Ayatollah Burujeri, they were smart, they asked him, marja taqlid, give us somebody. He sent another marja. And this marja wouldn't talk, because he was in Tehran. Our teacher would see him a lot. He was actually the person that when he was alive, our teacher Sheikh Ahmad al-Mushtahidi would send for him to put the amama on. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, they would talk to him and he would say, they'd say, how are you? What are you doing? What's going on? He was like, Bale. He wouldn't talk much because he's in the remembrance of God. Unfortunately, sometimes we talk so much, and I'm talking about myself, that we forget about everything around us, how we're even driving, where we're going. You miss the exit, you bump into the other car, Because we're busy talking too much. وَلَا يَتَعَظَّمْ عَلَى خَلْقِي. It never tyrannizes my creatures, isn't arrogant upon my creatures. He is in a way that he is abusive to the creation of Allah. وَيُطْعِمُ الْجَائِعَ وَيَكْسُ الْعَارِي. That he gives to the hungry, he attires the naked. What does that have to do with salat when you think about that? Helping someone that's hungry, helping someone that is clothless. Because when you do things like that, act of kindness, Allah gives you rizq. Allah gives you benefit. When you help somebody out, even if it's something small. قول المعروف صدقة, for example. كل معروف صدقة. Every action is sadaqah. Something kind, something nice to somebody, or sometimes sacrificing something. You wanted this, you give it to the other person. Allah will give you spiritual rizq, inshallah. وَيَرْحَمُ الْمُصَابِ. Have you seen some people that they have musibat, they have an affliction. They might have lost somebody, they might have lost a job, they might be in pain, and then they come to them and console them and talk to them, bring them in. They have rahmah to someone that is in a difficult situation. Musab. He comes to them to tell them everything will be okay. This person, his salat will be accepted. It's ajib. His salat will be. So it's a lot of that is about how you live your life as a genuine, true Muslim, that you're doing your social obligations, you're filling your spiritual obligations collectively together, and that produces a good musalli, a good person that does salah. وَيُؤَيِّ الْقَرِيبِ, and finds a place for the strange. Then it says about such people that we mentioned these characteristics, وَذَلِكَ يُشْرِقُ نُورُهُ مِثْلَ الشَّمْسِ. The light of such people will shine like sunlight. People that perform these actions, that are humble, that abstain from their shahawat, that they spend their time remembering God, that don't tyrannize others, that feed the hungry, attire those that are clothesless. They are like light, if we could only see them. Sometimes you have to go to someone that has, is a precious gem specialist to see what type of diamond and what type of clarity and what type of cut this diamond has. You show it to somebody, he might not know the difference between a fake diamond and a very valuable diamond. Right? But it takes someone that he can be able to differentiate between the worth of diamonds. In the same way the angels, Allah differentiates between different people because they see the reality of the batin. أَجْعَلْ لَهُ فِي ظُلْمَةٍ نُورًا. Even in dhulma, even in darkness, wherever they are, you can say, wherever you are in the world, you will have light and nur. Even if you're far away from the shrines of Al-Nabi, even if you're all the way in the other part of the world, you can live your life and your light and your house will be full of light, nur. وَفِي الْجَهَالَةِ حِلْمًا أَكْلَأُ بِعِزَّتِي. So it says at the end, the composure, he has composure in the situation of ignorance. I will protect them by my might and assign my angels as their guard. يَدْعُونِي فَأُلَبِّي. They have this power. When they call Allah, it will be answered. And this is in reference to many times there are du'as that we can do, but because of our actions, because of our faults, our prayers are not heard. Sometimes we ask Allah, why don't you answer? We realize, and we talked about this in other centers, that Imam Ali talks about 8 characteristics of a person whose prayer is not answered. But this person, his prayer will be answered. Do all prayers get answered? Maybe not. Some of them are not good for them. Some of them, it's better in the hereafter, they'll say a reward for it instead. They'll get something else and they'll say, I wish none of my du'as were answered. But there are things in this world, especially when it comes to spiritual du'as. A person says, give me Karbala, inshallah, of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Give me Mashhad al-Rida alayhi salam. Give me Hajj, inshallah. Give me Karbala every year. And it gets answered because that's in our benefit, is it? It's not that it's not in our benefit. So you see a person that is careful throughout the day and performs this good salat, and his salat is accepted, Allah will answer his dua. He makes dua, especially qunut, Allah will answer. فَأُعْطِيهِ فَمَثَلُ ذَلِكَ الْعَبْدِ عِنْدِي وَيَسْأَلُنِي فَأُعْطِيهِ. And he asks and I provide. فَمَثَلُ ذَلِكَ الْعَبْدِ عِنْدِي كَمَثَلِ جَنَّاتِ الْفِرْدَوْسِ. And his example is like the heavens, the highest paradise. لَا يُسْبَقُ أَثْمَارُهَا وَلَا تَتَغَيَّرْ عَنْ حَالِهَا. Its fruits are unparalleled and it never changes. So we talked about tonight one of the best ways and the most things for us to concentrate, and I ask you and myself that when you take these lectures, inshallah, learn these lectures to implement and try to work on salat itself and try to work on those things that are around salat, those other characteristics, so that inshallah when you talk to Allah, it is in a good manner, a proper manner, inshallah. At the end, I like to mention some of the musibats of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, because I feel that this is, as our teacher Shaykh Ahmad al-Mushtahidi would say, is like salt on the food. It gives a taste. Because Imam Hussein is Misbahul Huda, is the lantern of guidance, is Safinatul Nijat, is the ship of salvation. Sometimes you try to do something so hard and concentrate, but maybe you shed a few tears for the daughter of Imam Hussein, Lady Ruqayya. And because of the daughter of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Allah gives you a good salat, Allah gives you good position, Allah gives you more rizq, inshallah. Because they are the abwabullah, they are the path to God. Imam Hussein alayhi salam is, we could say, as Shaheed Sadr talks about, huwa al-Islam kullu. Shaheed Muhammad Baqir Sadr talks about Imam Hussein as being all of Islam. If you imagine Islam, all of it put together, and with all its beliefs and ahkam, it would be Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam. And such a being, when they martyred Imam Hussein alayhi salam, they have martyred Islam, because he was the display of Islam, the display of Allah's rahmah, the display of Allah's justice, the display of the nur that is coming from Allah in this world. Imam Hussein alayhi salam stood for salat. One of the things that he did in Karbala on the day in Dhuhr, he did salat. And some of the companions were injured for salat. Some of them would take arrows, and arrows were shot, and they would take and stand in front so that Imam Hussein alayhi salam can do his salat. But at such a time when arrows were shot, some of the companions were hit, some in their chest. You see that this path is the path of salat and worship of Allah. And you see that one of the people after Imam Hussein was martyred, and that her salat al-layl, they say, was never missed, was Lady Zainab alayhi salam. With all the tribulations and all the difficulties that she had and all the responsibilities, Imam Hussein, Yawm al-Ashura, stood in congregation for salat, and Lady Zainab alayhi salam, either in the dungeons of Sham, in Kufa, would perform the salat in the middle of the night, protecting the children of Imam Hussein at the same time, and worshipping Allah like your father Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ya Allah, we ask you, because of these holy names that we mentioned, Imam Hussein, his beloved sister Lady Zainab alayhi salam, make us inshallah our salat a good salat inshallah. Make us focus on ourselves, and throughout the day with our busy schedule, however busy it is, that we work and we are focused, and in our actions are for you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah, bless the marhumeen of this gathering, and all of them, forgive all the marhumeen inshallah. Give shafa to all those that are sick inshallah. Expedite the return of our master, and expedite the return of the sun behind the clouds, inshallah, and make us of his soldiers, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal.